and welcome to the Illinois LawCast, a podcast about the wisdom, wit, and curiosity of the University of Illinois College of Law. I'm your host, Chris Davies, and for this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with University of Illinois Athletic Director Josh Whitman. An academic All-American with the Fighting Illini football team, Whitman played briefly in the NFL before returning to Illinois to work in the athletics department and attend the College of Law. He graduated in 2008 and then clerked on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit and practiced law in Washington, D.C., with Covington and Burling LLP before embarking on a career in athletics administration. When he was hired at Illinois in 2016, Whitman was the youngest athletic director among major conferences. In his nearly 10 years here, he has raised millions of dollars and overseen great success among Illinois varsity teams. We spoke about his path to the athletic director position and why he chose to pursue a law degree to get there. Whitman was a gracious and insightful guest, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Josh Whitman, thank you very much for making time to join me today.
Happy to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, this is a busy time for you. Homecoming next week. We've got a lot of successes. The football team's ranked, soccer team's ranked and undefeated with new coach, let me get the name right, Katie Hulton.
Hultine, yes.
Hultine,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you just announced a pretty big deal, the naming rights for the Memorial Stadium sale. You've kind of do it all around here, and so I appreciate you making time for us.
Happy to do it.
Let's talk a little bit about your biography, your background. Obviously, you came here as a player back in '99, started with Ron Turner the same year. You played, and then you went off and did a little more playing in the NFL. But you came back here for law school. Was law school always something that you were interested in, or was there something that showed you that a law degree might be where your interest lied?
It was, for me, always about wanting to be in a chair that looked like the one I'm sitting in now. Not necessarily this chair per se, but the opportunity to be an athletic director at a major university. And so I started to chart that path when I was an undergraduate here. I became friends with Ron Gunther, who was the athletic director at the time, learned more about how an athletic program operates away from the bubble of the football team, and came to understand a little more the range of opportunities that existed within college athletics. As I got into professional football and started to wind that down and think through what was the next step towards wanting to be a college athletic director, knew I needed more education. I knew I needed to go back to school, spent a lot of time thinking about where that would be best utilized. And so really came down for me to, do I pursue an MBA or do I get a law degree? And at the time, there were a number of high-profile athletic directors getting hired who happened to have law degrees. And you saw the business of college athletics, although it's much different even then than it is today, 20-some-odd years later. You could just see the business of college athletics growing, accelerating. The visibility, the dollars, those two things together tend to create risk and some additional need for legal background. And so ultimately, and I advise students on this now, I think it's a lot about trying to make yourself different than other people who want the same opportunities that you're pursuing. And in my world, athletic directors with law degrees are still relatively uncommon. And so I felt like that would be something that would help differentiate me as I got into the marketplace.
Yeah. And you're an Indiana boy originally. You came here, kind of traded allegiances. What brought you back to Illinois law specifically?
For me, it was a combination of things. Obviously, I'd had a great experience here as an undergraduate, felt very connected to this university. Again, the relationship that I had with Ron Gunther was important. He had offered me the opportunity to come back and work in the athletics program at whatever point my football playing days were over. And so when I looked at Illinois, I saw a highly regarded law school. I saw a Big Ten athletic program and a chance for me to do those two things at the same time. And so I actually started working in the athletics program first. I started there like in January of 2005, working full-time. And then in August of 2005 is when I started here at the law school. And so cut back to part-time in the athletics program. And despite going against the suggestion from the College of Law, which is not to work during your first year, I took on both of those responsibilities and was able to manage both of those throughout the entirety of my experience here. And so that was really pretty great for me to be able to get my education while at the same time gaining some real world work experience that I think ultimately positioned me to take on some of the things I've been able to do since.
Yeah, and I'm sure balancing those two responsibilities was good preparation for all of the responsibilities of being athletic director as well.
Yeah, I having been an undergraduate student athlete, I was accustomed to having two really big obligations in my life, and so I just kind of took football out and replaced it with law school, or I guess took football out and replaced it with the work in DIA, and took my undergraduate and replaced it with the work here at the college. And so it was not foreign to me what I was doing, but the things I was spending my time on were a lot different than what I'd been accustomed to.
What stands out to you looking back a couple decades now on your time as a student here at College of Law? Were there any classes, groups that really helped shape your path forward?
Like anybody who comes through this college, you're so fortunate both in terms of the people you get to learn from and the people you get to learn with. And I think that's something that makes this college so special, or just the quality of the faculty, the quality of the student body. And so I hope everybody who comes through here, I had certain professors who really resonated with me and who I grew close with, people I still communicate with to this day. Tom Hewlin, Andy Leopold, Tina Gonzalez, Lori Reynolds. Those were probably four of my best and most appreciated professors. And then there were a number of classmates who I still are very close with today. So no class necessarily that I thought, boy, this really accelerated my career path, but just the quality of the people I was able to interact with and some of the relationships I was able to form that still are very impactful for me all these years later.
Yeah. You mentioned having a law degree sets you apart from other candidates, and that it is still rather rare for an athletic director to have a law degree. What do you think you use the most of your law degree at this stage and through the changing world of college athletics?
It's a great question. I use lots of parts of it. I don't practice in any particular area. It's not like I spend all of my time in contract law or in criminal law, although you do a lot of contract work, you do a little criminal work. And obviously when I say work, I'm not functioning as a practicing attorney for the university, but it does allow me to have a fluency in so many different things that are important in college athletics today. And so as we work through some different opportunities with the federal government, and as we think about the legislative process and what kinds of things we want to see included in federal legislation, as we continue to encounter a number of different lawsuits, most of which are being brought in the area of antitrust and understanding how antitrust works and functions, some other litigation stemming in the area of employment, understanding employment law, and then boiling it down to a lot of the things that we do related to contracts, executive compensation, negotiation was a class that I took here that's been incredibly helpful. And then at the end of the day, a lot of this work is about risk analysis. It's about problem solving. It's about communication. And those were not always necessarily explicit classes that I took, but they were skills that I honed as a student here that are used every single day in the work that I do now. And so certainly there are many, many athletic directors out there who are not lawyers, and they're wonderful athletic directors. But from my perspective, it's really hard to imagine doing what I do now without having the background that I have. It's just been so important to my own development and to the way that I do the work.
Yeah. And speaking of the legal developments and the lawmaking process, you spoke to Congress earlier this year.
I did.
Provided testimony. What was that experience like for you? And
it was a lot harder than this. I'm glad. I didn't wear a T-shirt and jeans for that, I can promise you. It was different. As someone who has done a lot of public speaking and been involved in a lot of different situations, that was one that was unique. And the preparation for it was very intense. The actual experience, again, having not done it before, was a little bit intimidating. You know, what people don't see when they watch it on television is it's a little bit like a television production. There are people you see on the cameras, the speaker and the people who are at the tables, but there's a lot of coming and going. It's almost like a bus station. There are representatives coming in and out of the room. They'll come in, they'll be on camera to ask their question. They'll leave for the next 90 minutes, and you won't see them again until they come back in at the very end, if they come back at all. Mm-hmm. There are aides constantly coming in and out of the room and whispering in their representatives' ears. There's just a lot of activity within the room. It's not nearly as quiet and somber as perhaps it appears on television. And so kind of blocking out all the extraneous activity and really trying to be focused on the questions and the conversation that you're engaged in is a really important part of that. And it was I don't know if it was a cool experience. I don't know that I necessarily am excited by the prospect of going back at some point, but to do it once was certainly one that I think I'll remember for a long time.
Speaking there about things like name, image, and likeness, the house settlement, and whether or not student athletes should be considered employees, all of that, how did your law degree help you to prepare? Obviously, you also have people on your staff that can help you with that, but from your personal experience, how did that lend a hand?
It just allows me to understand the things that I'm talking about in I think, a more intimate and personal way. I can have people explain things to me, which happens all the time, and I can learn them, but I'm not going to have the same depth of understanding as something that I've studied in school and now has been a part of my work for the better part of 20 years. And so that's really where it's been nice, is that I'm able to speak from a point of true understanding on some of these issues. It's not like I'm just reciting from a script or telling people what I've been told. And so it allows me to engage with them, I think, on a more genuine basis and be a little more grounded in some of my responses.
A little bit more about your team, the people who help you out. We were fortunate to have Cam Cox join us on the podcast last season. He was a great guy, and he spoke highly of all the things that are going on in the athletics department, including, the group of people that you have there. And it seems like team is very important to you. Do you bring that back to your background in team sports? Is it something you learned elsewhere?
I think it probably has to do with team sports. That's certainly, of course, my background. I grew up playing not only football, but basketball and baseball primarily. And so that's always been sort of my comfort zone. I'm very familiar with the locker room and team dynamics and trying to build a coalition of people who are all moving towards a common purpose. But now I've been an athletic director for almost, I'm now in my 16th or 17th year as a college athletic director. And so I've learned over the years also the importance of building a good team and more so the importance, but how to actually do it, how to identify the right talent and how to bring people together. And then importantly, once they're together, how do you make them coalesce? How do you try and create connections between them? Because we do talk within the athletics program a lot. It's not just about assembling a great group of individual performers, but for us to really reach our potential, we have to function as a team. We have to collaborate. We have to work well together. And that's something that I really give our group a lot of credit for, because I think we do that at a high level. Everybody brings different experiences, different perspectives, different expertise, and we try and harness all that together for the betterment of the athletics program. And we're certainly far from perfect, and we make a lot of mistakes, but we do it with a group of people we care about, and I think that we're always moving things forward, which is ultimately our goal.
One of the things that we focus on here at the College of Law is our leadership program. And as the leader of the athletics department, is there any one thing that you consider most important that you lay out for your team to move forward towards your goal?
We talk a lot about leadership and DIA, and I really believe that the key to any successful operation and ultimately the key to being an effective leader is trust. So when you think about one singular concept, we talk a lot about trust in DIA. And trust, of course, has two elements to it. I have to trust you, you have to trust me. And we believe that no interaction that you have with another person is trust neutral. You're either building trust and rapport with another person or you're taking away from it. And so we really try to be intentional in the interactions that we have and recognize that you build trust through accountability, through ownership, through empowerment, through all the different things that come through strong personal interaction. And we're so much more efficient as an organization when you're able to knock down walls and build connectivity, which is ultimately rooted in strong trust.
And that has led to quite a bit of success here and sustained success, which I know has been one of your goals. If I can just read some of your brag points here for a second. 110 NCAA postseason appearances, 31 teams finishing in the top 16 nationally, 9 Illinois student athletes capturing 11 individual national championships. All pretty remarkable achievements for the athletic department. This is going to be 2 parts. What do you think has been the most rewarding aspect of all of this, and what has been the most difficult?
I think the answer to those questions might be the same thing.
Yeah.
The most rewarding is knowing that when I got here, the athletics program was not in a great place. We were on the heels of some scandal in football where we'd let a coach go a week before the regular season started. We'd had some challenges in women's basketball. Men's basketball hadn't been to the tournament in some time. Track and field wasn't performing at a particularly high level. Our facilities were behind where they needed to be. And so we've just gradually and steadily over the last 10 years tried to take on individual steps towards a better future. And now we're enjoying that better future. And it has been tough and gritty and far from a perfectly upward path. We've taken steps forward and taken a couple steps back along the way. And certainly that's, I think, contributed to our growth, to our learning curve, to our process. But we're in a much, much better place now than where we were when I got here. And I think that's all you can ask for in a leadership role like this, is to feel like you and the people around you have had a chance to make a difference. And I think we've made a difference here. And that's something that is really rewarding, and also at the same time, the thing that has been the most challenging. Yeah. And now for us is making sure that we stay hungry, that we don't allow an ounce of complacency to enter our bodies, and that we continue to look and strive for what's next and looking for ways to raise the bar and continue to elevate the program. And so it's been a remarkable process. And I think for our group, we really try to appreciate where we've come from. I don't know that you can fully enjoy where you are if you don't have an understanding of where you started. And so it's all part of who we are. It's part of what we've been able to do. But it's also recognition that there's a certain mentality, a certain attitude, a certain work ethic that has allowed us to get here. And we can't for a second allow ourselves to lose that as we continue to look for ways to take the next steps with our program.
Yeah, and some of the things that you've been able to oversee here, multi-million-dollar gifts for facilities in football, basketball, golf, soccer, track field, baseball, and softball. How do you fight complacency now that you've achieved that? How do you keep pushing forward?
The great thing about sports is there's a scoreboard, and unless you're winning the last event in every sport every year, there's always more to do, and so we're continually looking for places to provide additional support to our student athletes, to help our coaches and our support staff take another step forward. And you've always got a new group of incoming student athletes who have never been here before, who are excited to be a part of the Fighting Illini program and helping to teach them about what it means to be here and to be associated with this university and the tradition of this athletics department. There's always new donors to find and more gifts to identify. There's always new facilities to try and tackle, and so it's exciting because it's in many ways it's very much an evergreen opportunity to sit as an athletic director at a university like this one, because there is always more to do. And if you are an inherent competitor, as I am, you don't need somebody to prescribe what the next steps are. You're constantly looking at your program, trying to figure out where we can be better.
Speaking of the student athletes, how does your experience as a double Illini help you to convey what it means to be an Illini to them, to convince them even to come here in the first place?
I think it helps. I probably underestimated how impactful it would be for me as an alumnus to have the chance to work in this role at my alma mater until I got here, and certainly now all these years later. It does give me, I think, a unique appreciation for this place and for what the experience is to be a student athlete here. Obviously, with each year that passes, my time here grows a little more distant in the rearview mirror, and so maybe makes my frame of reference a little more outdated than I'd like to admit that it is. But I think it does, I think, allow me to connect with them on a more personal level. I enjoy the chances that I have to meet with recruits in all of our sports, which I do regularly. And I do talk about my time here and why I think this place is different, and the chance to be a part of our family, which is a term that we live, not just use, is something that is worth really strong consideration from them and their families, because it's a life-changing opportunity, and we want to try and convey that to them during their time on our campus.
You meet with recruits, you're meeting with donors, you've got all the legislative and business aspects of being an athletic director. And something that I know law students, lawyers deal with is burnout and balance. How do you manage that? I know you're a husband and father, and that's something you're very proud of. How do you keep it all from getting overwhelming?
I don't know that we should assume that I do. I mean, honestly, there are days where it is very overwhelming, and I'm not too proud to acknowledge that. And I think that's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that all the things that come at us in life on occasion can feel overwhelming. And if we're doing things that matter and we're spreading ourselves amongst different priorities, it's probably to be expected that there's going to be some days where it all feels too big. But hopefully it's not most days. And for me, a lot of it is, it's not necessarily what I call work-life balance. I just think that's a little bit of a red herring. I think it's really hard to chase balance. I do think it's, for me anyway, it's been about hour by hour prioritization. I think about it sometimes like those plate spinners you see on TV, when they've got the plates on the end of the sticks, and they get one plate spinning really well, and then they go over and spin another one, and they come back to a third one, and they just try and keep them up all on the end of the stick. And that's kind of what my life feels like is, okay, well, I haven't, it's just happened to me. I was gone. I've been gone from home. I don't know what the numbers were, 9 out of the last 10 nights or something like that. And last night was my first night at home in a while, and I knew that's where I needed to be. And so I was able to make sure that I was home last night and spend that time with my family. And this morning we've just kind of gone through with the geese gift and the announcement last week, and we had a board meeting this week. We've just been on kind of a 2-week sprint here that's been a lot of work. So this morning I had a little bit of a slower morning. I was able to stay home and take my kids to school, go to breakfast with my wife. I mean, and so that was something that today, because the other plates had been spinning pretty fast for a while, I was able to come back to those other ones because they were needing some attention. And so you just kind of go through your day and figure out, all right, for the next hour, what's the highest and best use of my time. And in the same day, I can pivot very quickly from, all right, for this hour, I haven't worked out in 2 days. I'm going to go for a jog, to I'm going to come back and I need to make these phone calls to donors or coaches. And then an hour after that, my kid has got a soccer practice, so I'm going to go run to that. And then I've got to get back on the phone and do this other thing. And so it lends itself to needing to be very agile and being able to switch hats quickly in the course of a day. But at this point, I've been doing it this way for a long time. And so I've gotten used to it. I wouldn't really know any other way to go about it. And it helps to have a really trusting, loving partner who understands what you're going through. And I think it's important to her and to my kids that although there are moments where I want to be with them and can't, they always need to know that that's where I would like to be. That they understand that even if my physical body is not where they are all the time, that my heart is always where they are, and try and convey that in as many ways as I can when I'm not able to always be present in the flesh.
All right, for my last question, I'm going to ask you to pivot, to another spinning plate.
Sure.
Put your recruiting hat on again.
Yeah.
If a law student were interested in doing something similar to your career path, maybe not the NFL part, but seeking work in college athletics, what advice would you give them?
Well, first, I would say I don't think there's ever been a better time for a young attorney to get into college athletics. We need good lawyers. We just do. And there's more organizations now stepping into the college athletics environment. We've got the new College Sports Commission, the NCAA, you've got the conference offices, the universities now are getting big enough and complex enough that a lot of university athletic programs are hiring their own attorneys inside their athletic program. There is lots and lots of opportunity for people to test their skills in the college athletics environment, which I hope for those who want to get into our business is exciting news. I think traditionally, certainly when I went through law school, the general mindset was, well, if you graduate with a law degree, then you immediately go into compliance. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it's much broader than that for all the reasons that I mentioned earlier in terms of the parts of that education that I use every day. We have, just to give you an example, within our program, I think we now have 5 attorneys who aren't practicing for the university, but they have been to law school, have practiced at some point in their lives, and now are applying those experiences and that skill set to the work that we do in a non-privileged, non-legal environment. And so we give folks lots of opportunities to be flexible in how they apply their training. And so I think that's, what I would say is you have to be intentional about it. It's not going to just happen on accident. You've got to look for roles that could align with what you've been doing. But I think you also have to recognize that you're probably going to step away from the true practice of law relatively quickly. And that for me was a bridge that I had to be comfortable crossing. I'd only been practicing for a couple of years. And when I got my first opportunity to become an athletic director at a young age, at small school up in Wisconsin, I had to acknowledge that I'd gone to school for 3 years. I'd been a federal clerk on the 7th Circuit. I'd worked at a great law firm in Washington, D.C. And once I crossed that bridge, there was a really good chance that I was never going to cross back over again and become a practicing attorney. And so you have to be comfortable with that idea that I'm going to take this education that I've spent a lot of money on and put a lot of time into, and I'm not going to apply it in its truest sense. I think that's great, but others, I think, have to be comfortable with that idea before they can, I think, fully benefit from the range of experiences that could be available in college athletics, because some of them will allow you to be a true practicing attorney, but many of them won't. And that's okay, as long as people acknowledge that and are comfortable with that.
That's a very thoughtful answer. Thank you. And I feel like I could talk to you for a very long time, but you're a busy man, so I'm going to let you go. But thank you once again for taking time to join us, and go Illini.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. A very proud alumnus of the college, and go Illini.
Thank you again to Josh Whitman for taking time from his busy schedule to do the podcast. Thank you to our listeners as well for making the Illinois LawCast a part of your day. If you have any comments or suggestions for the podcast, please send us an email to podcast@law.illinois.edu and subscribe to the Illinois LawCast on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you find your podcasts. This episode was recorded, mixed, and edited by me, Chris Davies. Special thanks to Kelly Moss for our album art and other graphics, and Krista Getke for her help in the editing process. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Illinois LawCast.